We've got a little bit of a different thing here for you today in our replay reviews. What we're going through is not an actual replay, but instead it's going to be an idea around a replay. Here, I'll show you what I'm talking about. So this comes from the APBA journal on January 1986. This is this letter here by Dave Elderkin, a different replay idea. I'll read some of this out loud for you here, and let's make this a little bit bigger so we can kind of see what's going on. So there I go, flipping around. The APBA journal carries several replay results in each issue. These replays fall into 4 categories: full season, original franchise all-star, great teams of the past, or single team. Each of these replays has its own special appeal. Full season or single team replays should generally produce accurate statistics and are especially interesting if a person has followed that season or that team very closely. The All-Stars have their own fascination, like being able to have Ruth, DiMaggio, and Mantle all in the same outfield. Replays of great teams allow a table manager to settle hot stove arguments, at least in his own mind, about which is the best of the best. And, of course, a single-team replay of a full season takes the least of that precious commodity time. There are some disadvantages, however, to the kinds of replays just described. For example, when replaying an entire league schedule, you're going to have to play some boring teams. A 1927 AL replay gives you the legendary Yankees and one of the strongest second-place teams of all time, the Philadelphia Athletics. But replaying that season means that you're also stuck playing a September series between the Browns and the Red Sox. A single-team replay solves that problem somewhat, since it can be assumed that there is at least an interest in one of the teams. Another disadvantage of the specific season replay is that the teams tend to offer a similarity of playing style which could become monotonous over an entire schedule. Personally, I like to play games from the dead ball era because a game can be whipped out in as little as 15 minutes using the basic game. Sounds like me with NPIII. However, there are times when I wish that somebody sometime would hit a homer. The teams of the 1950s offer plenty of power and some outstanding pitchers, but a replayer could go a whole week without seeing a stolen base. A replay of the 1930 season could drive a person batty after 100 or so 12-5 and 10-9 slugfests. The disadvantage of an all-stars or an all-great teams replay is inaccurate statistics, although a person playing such a replay probably knows that before he starts. Replays of any season after 1969, when expansion brought the number of teams to 26, can also be very time-consuming. And so he goes on here to describe a different replay idea. At that time, there were 17 old-time seasons issued by APBA, along with each season's teams going back to 1950. And so his idea was to take one team from each of the original 16 franchises and then add one team from 16 of the 17 seasons for each franchise and try to have their won-loss records evenly distributed so that the league average winning percentage is around 500, right? And so what he came up with was something like this, right? The 1901 Red Sox, 1919 White Sox, 32 Indians, 13 Tigers, the 27 Yankees, and the 16 A's, 41 Browns and the 22 Senators. The Yankees are going to dominate that league. Or in the National League, the 1950 Dodgers, the 48 Cubs, the 24 Reds, the 53 Braves, the 08 Giants, the 30 Phillies, the 34 Pirates, and the 38 Cardinals, for a league that I think would actually be pretty interesting. And there are some ideas here for substitutions and other things that you can think of. I think this is a really interesting idea. And since this is such an interesting idea, I have done a little bit myself of looking around for sort of a version of this. So we'll go ahead and set this up. Now, as this article, we didn't read through this, goes on to mention there are a whole bunch of star players that you get. So I came up with my own version of a parody project, which you can see in front of you here. And interestingly enough, this project would also get you a lot of stars. So let's zoom in a little bit more, make this nice and big. In the National League, we have here nothing but teams that finished 500. National League, you have the 32 Braves, 77 Cubs, the 96 Reds, the 93 Dodgers, 84 Phillies, the 67 Pirates, the 2022 Giants, and the 73 Cardinals. You can see most of this is focused around the 70s, 80s, and 90s, with a little bit of an exception. That wasn't deliberate, that's just the way that I chose them. In the American League, we'd have the 57 Orioles, 85 Red Sox, the 2002 White Sox, the 16 Indians, the 2010 Tigers, the 72 Twins, The 1911 Highlanders, because the Yankees, it's kind of hard to find an interesting team playing 500. I hate the Highlanders from this era, but whatever. And then the 87 Athletics, which is the real interesting part. Now, we have a problem when it comes to star players. The big problem is that Bill Buckner played for the 77 Cubs and then played for the 85 Red Sox. So maybe you put in a different team for the 77 Cubs or do something. I don't know. This is just an idea I came up with, in like 10 minutes. But look at the star players that are included. You have Rabbit Moranville, at age 40, but you have Rabbit Moranville in this. You have Bruce Sutter at age 24, Eric Davis and Barry Larkin of the 96 Reds, Mike Piazza at only 24, Darryl Strawberry, 31, but he was kind of washed up by 93, Orel Hershiser, who was only 34, Steve Carlton, but an aging Carlton at 39, Mazeroski, Wills, Stargell, and Clemente, some of these very young, Stargell and Clemente young on the 67 Pirates. You'd have Lou Brock, who was still fast at age 34 on the Cardinals, Bob Gibson, who was falling apart. You get to the 85 Red Sox, you have Clemens, Boggs, and Rice, as well as a whole bunch of other great players from that time, which is fascinating to play with. Frank Thomas at only 32 on the 2002 White Sox. Tris Speaker, 28 years old with the 1916 Indians. The Miguel Cabrera with the 2010 Tigers. Here's the Twins. Killebrew, Carew, and Bert Blyleven. For those of you who love to argue about the Hall of Fame. Hal Chase, we don't like him. And then with the 87 Athletics, you have McGuire, Canseco, Reggie Jackson, Dave Stewart, Dennis Eckersley. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I look at this and I look at those players and I think, I really want to play this. This looks like this would be a lot of fun. This looks like it's fascinating, right? Which team do you think is the favorite here? I mean, probably the 87 Athletics in the American League, but the 85 Red Sox are a really strong team. And, the 2010 Tigers, I think, are much better than that record, right? In the National, the 77 Cubs, if you don't know about this, actually were challenging for the pennant for a little while before going back down to earth. 67 Pirates are not that different from the 1960 team. The 93 Dodgers were underperformers. The 96 Reds, as we saw, had a great lineup. This is like a really cool idea for a season, right? None of these are teams that are all that famous, but there are a lot of really famous and good players on the teams, and it's kind of hard to tell which team would be the favorite. So there you go. That's an example. Again, it's not like a review of a full replay, but this is the sort of thing you can do to sort of set something up to be interesting. If you're bored and you're like, I'm tired of playing two second division teams against each other, set up something like this. Have them all be equal, or have them all be first division teams that just aren't that good, or have them all be really, really bad teams but with interesting stories or something like that. You can see how, like, when you start messing around with this sort of thing and you start playing around with different ideas, you can start getting ideas coming forth that are just totally different from anything you maybe have done before and that are kind of fun. You can kind of mess around with it. And that's what we want to do here, of course, with the replay reviews. More than anything else, what we want to do is we want to introduce to you different ideas and different concepts that you probably haven't tried before that very well might change the way that you think about baseball replays and might have a good and hopefully positive impact on the way that you play. So there you have it. I hope that you enjoyed this. We'll talk about more of these next week, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye.